Yes? You brought me wine!
Oh my god, I'm not gonna be the only one that's drinking.
You're such a good husband. I love you so much.
I love you so much too.
Yay!
Welcome back to Dinner and a Murder, episode 6, part 2. We're your hosts. I'm Rose.
And I'm Chelsea.
And like we said in part 1 that came out on Thursday, this is our Delaware Day special extravaganza 2-part episode.
Dun dun dun.
And in our last episode, Chelsea talked about Tony. Ooh.
Tony.
I really was diving in to that, like, mom mentality. It was like Tony Capano. Thomas Capano.
Yeah.
Tony Capano.
Yes, and I had a lot more to say than I anticipated. So here we are on part 2.
Yeah, I feel like I'm probably going to have the same thing. But, so we're just going to jump right on in. Part 2 is moi. I will be doing food as well, a restaurant. I don't know what you would call it.
It's a...
Capriati's isn't a restaurant.
No.
It's a deli.
They're a sandwich shop.
We'll be doing another staple, although it did not start in Delaware. It started in Pennsylvania.
Semantics.
I will be talking about Wawa.
No, my favorite.
And any person who is from the Tri-State area or New York or Maryland and they're from the areas where they don't have Wawa, they know the cult following of the Wawa lovers. It's Hoagie Fest.
Yeah.
Oh my god.
Ugh.
When they have like their drinks for sale for like $1.
Oh my gosh. Free coffee day. I mean.
Free coffee day. Okay, so for anybody who doesn't know because they're not from Delaware, Pennsylvania, or New Jersey, or parts of Maryland, Wawa is so much more than a gas station, okay? It's not 7-Eleven. It's not Royal Farms.
Oh, no. Don't even compare it to Royal Farms.
It's not Circle K. It's not Quick Check. I can't even think of an equivalent over here in the UK. It is not any of those things where you get gas, petro, as they call it here. It could be its own deli, okay?
It's everything.
Store. It's a convenience store, deli, and gas station all wrapped into one. You don't have to worry about dying from, like, gas, like, you know how people, like, the urban legend of, like, gas station sushi? You're not gonna die from eating Wawa food. I mean, I say that, but watch something happen. But
it's not like going to 7-Eleven and ordering a taquito that you know has been on that heat lamp for like 4 hours.
No, it would never be for hours because people get there and order that food every second of every day. Okay?
Yes, it's a deli. It's a made-to-order deli. So you go up to the little screen on the kiosk and you order your food, and they make it right there in front of you.
It is, honestly, when I say a cult following, I mean, I refuse to go to any other gas station other than Wawa. Mm-hmm. If I'm traveling somewhere and I need to get something to eat, it's Wawa. Yep. I had Wawa right before I went to the cake tasting for your wedding.
Oh, yes. Yes.
I wanted to make sure that my taste buds were not biased, that they were starving, okay? I wanted to make sure that I was well fed, and then went to the cake testing. Testing.
I mean, you did test it, technically.
I did test it. It's very similar words. But Wawa is amazing. They have coffee. They have a bunch of different iced coffees, smoothies, milkshakes. They now have soft serve in a lot of places. They have, my favorite soup that they have is chicken corn chowder.
Ooh, yes.
And it is the only chicken corn chowder I've ever had that I like you have to have it. Like, it's hard to describe. It's perfectly seasoned. It's creamy. It's warm. It's delicious. It's got chicken. It's got corn. It's got potatoes. I don't know what else you want in a soup. It's a chowder.
I mean, I could eat Wawa mac and cheese day in and day out and never get tired of it.
No, see, I am a heavy advocate for Wawa mashed potatoes.
I mean,
mashed potatoes in a pinch, okay?
Yes. But I mean, I like to go for the chicken bowls where you get like the chicken on top and then you can pick like stuffing and mashed potatoes or mashed potatoes and mac and cheese. Yeah. I always go for a chicken bowl with mashed potatoes and mac and cheese. Gotta have it. But they just have like so many things to eat there, a bunch of bowls and stuff. But since it is the holiday season and Chelsea was talking about a Bobby at Capriotti's, I'll be talking about their hot turkey gobbler, which in essence is basically not the same by all means, but contains similar ingredients to the Bobby. It's similar. So the hot turkey, as it says in its title, as opposed to Capriotti's cold turkey, the hot turkey is slices of turkey breasts smothered in some gravy. Some poultry gravy. Like I said, it's hot, it's warm, it like warms your soul. I love it. The gobbler has the hot turkey, the cranberry, and the stuffing. I will straight up just get hot turkey on a roll. Because it's just good. I don't know what it is. I don't know if they're like sprinkling like drugs in it to like make you want it more. I don't know what it is. It's just like you get it and then you get your iced coffee made to order. Their frozen cappuccinos are to die for. I'm excited. I know I said this last episode. I go home when this airs 2 weeks after this airs, and I'm like, I say home, but I really love the UK really a lot. But I go to visit my family, and I'm excited to eat the Philly cheesesteaks, to get the Bobbies, to get the hot turkey. I am ready for it. I miss it. It's not enough for me to want to live in the U.S. forever, but it's enough for me to come visit my family. Yes. So I think that's all I have to say about Wawa, other than, I mean, do you have any other tidbits about it? Yes, it's amazing. It's my favorite thing ever. When I was home in September for my sister's wedding, the hotel that Ryan and I were staying at was right across the street from Wawa, so I literally had Wawa for breakfast every single day. It was so unhealthy. Oh my god, I completely forgot about Wawa Sizzlies. Oh my god. Yeah, you gotta get that bacon, egg, and cheese Sizzlies. Bacon, egg, and cheese. Sizzlies are just breakfast sandwiches. You can get them breakfast. They're basically just you can get them on bagels or whatever they consider croissants, but they're still good. And I think now they have, what is it, the waffle? Yes, there's like, I think it's like either a waffle version or a pancake version, but it's like something a McGriddle like kind of, but better than a McGriddle. And it's like bacon, egg, and cheese. My go-to is obviously egg white and turkey sausage and cheese because I don't eat pork. It's still so good. It's so good. And now I just thought about it and I'm like, I used to stop there to get their hash browns. Oh my god. Tier 1 hash browns, fast food hash browns. Okay, no, here's my go-to breakfast from Wawa. I go to the deli and I get a breakfast burrito, and then of course you have to customize it naturally. Yep. You gotta get the bacon, egg, and cheese in the breakfast burrito, and then you gotta add in a hash brown. I used to be obsessed with their stuffed pretzels. Oh my gosh, those were the best things ever. That was my like after school snack when I was younger. Yes, I always got either the sweet one or the cheddar one. I always got the cream cheese stuffed pretzel. Yeah, the cream cheese one is the one I'm thinking of. I mean, and then I get there's no way iced cappuccino. Yes, I mean there's no way we can describe Wawa that sounds as good as what it actually is. You have to go and you have to experience it for yourself. Go.
Just go. Honestly, just visit Delaware. Go to a Wawa. Try not to go to any of them that are on Route 13. I'm just going to tell you guys that right now.
Well, we'll get into why that's the case with your story.
So much anymore.
Counts.
But yes, my story, good segue, is going to be about Delaware's one and only known serial killer.
Mm-hmm.
Insert oohs and ahs here. So, this serial killer, I'm just going to go right off the bat. His name was Stephen Brian Pennell. He was known as the Route 40 killer, infamously known as the Route 40 killer, but he also was known by the Corridor Killer and the Route 13 Killer. And the reason that is that Route 40 splits off into Route 13. Mm-hmm. So they are very, very close, and they are very, very main, I guess you would call them highways.
Yeah, I mean, they're not really highways. They're more of freeways. Like, there's traffic signals and everything.
Yeah, they are very major ones in Delaware. In fact, 13 for the longest time, I think until this period, was the main route to get to
beaches?
South Delaware, to the beaches.
Yep.
Which Delaware is a coastal state, in case that was not mentioned, and is very well known for its beaches, and most of its tourism comes from the beaches that are in the south parts of Delaware. So, jumping right on in, Stephen Pennell was born November 22nd, 1957 in Glasgow, Delaware. He was an electrician by trade, and like I said, is Delaware's only known serial killer. He was the first condemned person to argue in the Delaware Supreme Court to ensure his death sentence in order to spare his family, as he had a wife and 2 young children.
What?
Mm-hmm. I know it was like, I'm going to give you this little tidbit, but you're not going to know anything about it till later. So, shortly after the Thanksgiving of 1987, on November 29th, 23-year-old Shirley Ann Ellis left her house in Brookmont Farms, which is situated in between Food Lion and Governor Square on Route 40 today. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So this is in the Newark and Bear area. So she left her house before 6 p.m. and started out her 14-mile walk to Wilmington Hospital. Mm-hmm.
Dear God, woman.
She had in tow a dinner she was bringing to an AIDS patient. Mm-hmm. I actually looked up the weather for that day. The high was 50 degrees Fahrenheit. It didn't have a low. Mm-hmm. It was windy and raining heavily, so I imagine at 6 p.m. this time in November, it was much cooler.
Oh, definitely.
Than the 50 degrees. Shirley was a former sex worker and was familiar with Route 40. She had, however, left the profession to pursue nursing and had already started taking courses. However, it was the 80s, and she knew hitchhiking along Route 40 was the best way to get into the city. I know nowadays we're like, oh, so stupid to hitchhike, but it was just the culture then.
Yeah.
Like I mentioned earlier, Route 40 and Route 13 are major freeways and motorways. And from the Newark Bear area into Wilmington, which is a major city in Delaware. Mm-hmm. However, the DART bus system isn't like it is today, and even today it's really shitty.
Yeah.
So it wasn't like she could just hop on a bus and get into the city. It's the 80s, people were a little bit more trusting, and hitchhiking is the way to go if you want to get into the city.
Yep.
Unfortunately, 2 teenagers looking for an ideal makeout spot would discover Shirley's body around 9:25 p.m. that night. Mm-hmm. She was partially clothed and her legs were spread apart. After her autopsy, it was discovered that she was tortured and mutilated. Her feet and ankles had been bound, and the black duct tape used to keep her from screaming was still attached to her hair.
Oh my God.
There was no sign of sexual assault, but she was tortured with work tools before she died.
She was what?
Tortured with work tools, like pliers and such.
Oh my God.
The killer then wrapped a ligature, they're not sure exactly what it was, around her neck and struck her head several times with a hammer.
Oh, no.
And it's not the end, it's just the beginning.
Oh, God damn it.
Yep. 7 months later, on June 28th, 1988, Catherine DeMario was walking along Route 40 around 11:30 p.m. She was 31 years old and had a history of being arrested several times for offenses relating to sex work. She was witnessed accepting a ride from a stranger in a blue van. Catherine's body would be found the next morning at 6:25 a.m. by workers building the Fox Run apartment complex.
Oh, no. Wait, so she was like on the property where Fox Run is now?
Yes, so the apartment complex we know to be there today wasn't completed at that time. So if you're trying to think about where Shirley was from and where Catherine's body was found, it's maybe 5 minutes apart on the same stretch of road.
Oh, jeez.
Yeah, it's by where we grew up, so it's kind of like
it's right there.
It's a little nerve-wracking to see how close to home it is.
Yeah, it really is.
Yeah, so the Route 40 killer is another kind of like boogeyman in Delaware that not too many people hear about, unfortunately. Catherine was found completely naked, which is differed from Shirley's case, but the evidence of torture and mutilation from the use of work tools was the same as Shirley. Everything was the same, other than the fact that Catherine was completely naked and Shirley was only partially naked. Catherine was also strangled, then bludgeoned with a hammer. She wasn't sexually assaulted. And due to these similarities, the Newcastle County Police concluded that the same killer committed both crimes.
Well, duh.
Another difference in the case of Catherine DeMario's, the killer had left evidence on Catherine's body. She was covered with blue carpet fiber.
Ooh, interesting. Could that be from a blue van, perhaps?
Perhaps, maybe. All of us using our detective sleuthing skills. The Delaware State Police and NCCPD developed a task force with their headquarters near the Newcastle County Airport. It had 60 members and was the state's third largest police department at the time.
Whoa.
Yes. They not only were the third largest, they also had access to an airplane, helicopters, and rental vehicles, and they had an unlimited budget, which was unprecedented anywhere, not just Delaware.
Fun fact, I've ridden in that Del State helicopter. It's a lot of fun when you're not looking for a serial killer.
Yeah, I imagine so.
Yep.
Task force members met with the FBI's Behavioral Science Unit in Quantico, which is located in Virginia, and they concluded there was a serial killer in Delaware, which was everybody's fear. Nobody wanted that to be true. As Route 40 was the only connection between the two victims at the time, undercover female police officers were sent to the highway dressed as sex workers. They would engage with men who stopped in conversation but never got into a vehicle. On August 22nd, 1988, Margaret Lynn Finner, a sex worker, went missing. She was working along US 13 when witnesses saw her leave in a blue Ford panel van with round headlights driven by a white male. 3 months later, Margaret's body was found near the Chesapeake and Delaware Canal. Her body was in such advanced decomposition that the cause of death couldn't be determined, and no one was ever charged with her murder.
Oh, God.
It's just insinuated that Canal was responsible.
I mean, that was his van. That was his description, so.
So, enter this bad bitch. On September 14th, 1988, Officer Renee Tashner, she was a 23-year-old Newcastle County police officer was disguised as a sex worker, she would come face to face with the killer. Officer Tashner was popular among the, quote, Johns, which were customers. And she obviously didn't sleep with any of them, but she talked through several of them in the attempt to find the killer when a blue Ford panel van with round headlights drove past. Officer Tashner counted that the van had drove by her 7 times in 20 minutes.
Oh, God. What, like just waiting for her to be free so he could pick her up?
She just clocked the van driving up and down the road 7 times.
Just looking for somebody.
So whether it was her specifically or just trying to find a sex worker who was isolated, I'm not sure. Nobody's sure. She decided to walk over to a more secluded area, and the van stopped.
Oh no.
A white male opened the side panel and revealed blue carpeting covering the van's interior. Officer Tashner noted that the driver's behavior was cold, and it was difficult to start a conversation with him. She stated that it was like he was, quote, looking right through me, unquote. Officer Tashner was able to collect fibers from the carpeting while flirting with the driver.
She didn't get in, did she?
No, she just, admired the interior, the carpeting.
Oh, thank God.
But like I said, none of the officers ever got into the vehicles for safety reasons.
Yeah, I mean, it was the 80s. I doubt they were wearing wires or anything.
I'm not sure about wires, but definitely not GPS trackers or anything like that.
No, definitely not.
So she was able to collect these fibers while she was flirting with him. He demanded that she get into the van, and she refused and came up with some story about being tired from partying all night and that she needed to go home to go to bed. When she said this, the driver suddenly appeared to become suspicious and drove off.
Oh.
However, while Officer Tashner was conversing with the driver, her fellow officers that were staking out the area were able to run the van's plates and discovered that the van was registered to none other than Stephen Brian Pennell, a Delaware electrician with no criminal record.
Yet.
Yeah. The task force accelerated their activities, meaning that the blue fibers that Officer Tashner collected were sent for testing, and they were working to secure a search warrant to follow Pennell. Unfortunately, the killer also accelerated his activities.
Oh, no.
Yep. On September 16th, 1988, Michelle Gordon, a 22-year-old Newcastle resident, disappeared. She was also known to be a sex worker and was last seen on Route 40, hopping into the passenger side of a blue Ford panel van. The witness to the abduction knew both Michelle and Pennell, and she was able to immediately identify the vehicle. Unfortunately, 4 days later, Michelle's body washed up on the banks of the Chesapeake and Delaware Canal. Due to her cocaine addiction, she was the only victim that died while being tortured. According to the medical examiner, the drugs in her system made her heart unable to withstand the shock of the beating. She died.
I don't know whether to be thankful that she didn't have to endure all the beating or sad about it. I mean, it's sad, but...
I mean, it's the level of torture to have happened to just her heart gave out. I know she was hopped up, she had cocaine in her system, but still, it's... 3 days later, 26-year-old Kathleen Meyer, another Brookmont Farms resident like Shirley Ann, was last seen hitchhiking along Route 40 around 9:30 p.m. An off-duty police officer witnessed her accepting a ride from a stranger in a blue Ford van. Aware of the murders and the connection to the blue van, he took down the license plate number, which was registered to Pennell. However, Kathleen's body was never found.
Oh my God.
So I can't imagine being that police officer and having your gut feeling tell you, hey, take down this license plate number.
Yeah, you know something's wrong.
Yeah. Obviously it's the 80s, so it's you're not going to get that immediately back. and you have no right and no reason to stop them. You're an off-duty police officer. Even if you were on duty, you have no right to stop that van.
Yeah, I mean, in that moment, he's not doing anything wrong. It's not like he could.
Yeah, and it's just, it's heartbreaking. I can't imagine being that police officer watching that woman get into that van.
Knowing he's the last person that's going to see her alive.
Yeah, and then her body would never be found.
I just can't even handle that.
At this point, the task force was watching Pennell's every move, though not well enough, but they were, apparently I don't want to judge too much, because they were doing what they could with the fact that they didn't have search warrants and all of that.
Yeah.
And also the 80s. Officer Tashner even came into contact with Pennell's daughter, who was helping collect donations for a school fundraiser, and she commented on how heartbreaking it was to see this normal family and how it would affect them.
Oh my God. And she doesn't even know that her dad is the reason this is all happening.
Yeah, and she comments on that, like, this is just his daughter, and she has no idea that this is who her father is. And it reminds you that not only are the victims obviously affected by these horrible people, but their families are also just absolutely devastated.
Yeah.
By finding out somebody that they loved and care about could do such a thing. I can't imagine being either like a victim's family member or being a family member of the perpetrator. Leave the families alone at this point, unless it comes out like, yeah, they knew what was going on. Majority of the time they don't know what's going on, and it's not okay to harass them. It's not okay to harass victim family members. Why would you harass the perpetrator's family?
No.
Especially if they didn't know, it's not their fault.
Absolutely not. I mean, they're just as much victims as the people that, this person is murdering.
Their loved one is a monster who's destroyed so many lives.
And they have to live with
yours
that.
Now.
Yeah.
They have to live with that guilt. They have to live with the fact that their person that they loved is not only just the person they thought they were. They're genuinely people who destroyed lives.
Yeah, I mean, we went off on a tangent there, but
it's really hard to imagine. But to continue.
Anyway.
Off of our little tangent. Finally, the Attorney General approved a search warrant of Pennell's van. He was pulled over for a routine traffic violation and was immediately brought into court to pay his ticket, which was completely and totally legal for police to do in order to apprehend a suspect without them kind of getting a little
without them getting suspicious about why they're actually being arrested.
Yeah, where they don't run away or try to do a shootout or suicide by cop type of thing. So it wasn't used all the time, but it was something legal that they could do. The police searched the van. They found carbon fibers matching those that were on the victims. They found hair, blood, and the same brand of duct tape they found on Shirley. They also discovered a, quote, torture kit, unquote, complete with pliers, a whip, handcuffs, needles, knives, and other restraints.
Oh my God. My whole body hurts just thinking about that.
I know. On November 29th, 1988, exactly 1 year after he claimed the life of Shirley Ann Ellis, he was arrested and charged with the murders of Shirley, Catherine DeMario, and Michelle Gordon.
Good.
He had, unsurprisingly, exercised his right to remain silent.
Of course.
So to alleviate some of that pain, I'm going to hit you guys with a couple of Delaware fun facts.
Oh, good. Yes.
So I know these aren't as super fun as my last bits, but so Delaware is the second smallest state in the country next to Rhode Island, but it is the least populated state.
Really?
Yes.
Okay.
The population is under 1 million people in the state of Delaware. Delaware is only 1,954 square miles, so it is a little baby.
It's so small.
Yes, and the capital of Delaware is Dover, which is fun because there's a Dover in the UK and in New Jersey. So those are some fun facts, and those are like the most boring fun facts that I have. Unfortunately, Pennell was unsurprisingly, Pennell was described as being a, quote, typical all-American person, unquote. He appeared to be a normal family man who didn't have a criminal record. There were no signs in his background that were red flags, and no one ever thought he would be capable of such a thing. Dun, dun, dun.
It's what they always say.
That is what they always say. The trial would begin September 1989. The defense team attempted to get the carpet fiber evidence thrown out as inadmissible by arguing that Officer Tashner had no authority to seize the fibers. Had he succeeded in his argument, all of the evidence would have been swept under the, quote, fruit of the poisonous tree, unquote, legal doctrine.
I'm sorry, what?
Yes, so...
I'm gonna need a little more on that, please.
I was gonna explain it. Okay, so the fruit of the poisonous tree legal document, essentially it's, in this scenario, if he had gotten the carpet fibers thrown out, everything that they found in that van would have also been thrown out, including the hair, the blood, and the torture kit. Because in this case, so the fruit of the poisonous tree is if you've received evidence and that evidence leads you to get like a search warrant to find other evidence, any evidence that if that original piece of evidence is found inadmissible in court, all of the other evidence that was found because of that initial evidence is also swept. You cannot use it.
Oh, okay, I understand. So it's like the reason for doing that is no longer valid, so everything else is no longer valid.
Yes.
I got you.
Everything else is kind of the fruit of the poisonous tree. It's like everything else is tainted, so you cannot use it. So had the defense team been successful, they would have gotten the carpet fibers thrown out, and then anything they got the search warrant to search the van because of those carpet fibers. Yeah. So anything they found in that van would have also been thrown out.
I mean,
and they wouldn't have been able to use it.
I feel like the search warrant should have come from the fact that the last time these dead women were all seen was in this blue van. But I mean,
that's circumstantial evidence, which we discussed in the first part of this. So how many blue Ford vans are on the road at this time? Like, you got to take that into account. So you can't just pull over any person that has it.
So the evidence was not thrown out, and it was admissible.
No. So it was admissible because the defense team was trying to say it was unconstitutional because the officer had no right to collect those fibers because she didn't have a warrant. However, he opened his door for her to get in, and then at that time, he invited her in, number one, and number two, anything in plain sight can be used as evidence. I
mean, he invited her in, and by the laws of the vampire, that means she had all access.
Of the vampire. Well, yes, but also anything in plain view can also be considered evidence.
I mean, legal mumbo jumbo.
Legal mumbo jumbo, but right now, Rose, we're talking about paranormal mumbo jumbo, okay? Which is the law of the land.
Obviously.
Kathleen Jennings was the state prosecutor. She also had a backup in case the carpet fibers did get thrown up. She did have DNA evidence.
Good for her.
I know.
Leave it to a woman to have a plan B.
I know. Oh, wait. That was a joke.
Always.
Plan B. All right, we're not talking about that right now. So she had DNA evidence, and Pennell's case would be the first time DNA evidence would be used in a criminal trial.
Ever, or just in Delaware?
Ever.
Oh, no way! How is his case not more well known then?
Because everyone's like, oh, DNA, everyone has that. Oh.
No shit, Sherlock. God damn it.
I know, but they're like, man, DNA, schmear name.
Oh my god.
Oh my goodness. Yes.
So, yeah, my girl Kathleen Jennings is making landmark cases, okay?
Yeah.
In order to argue why Catherine DeMaro's DNA was in his van, however, Pennell claimed he gave her $25 for oral sex, then dropped her off. He even joked that she gave him $10 back.
Oh my God.
Needless to say, that joke did not go over well with the jury.
No.
Can you say poor taste? Can you also say know your audience?
Also, I'm sure his wife and children were in the room when he said that.
His kids, but his wife probably was.
Probably. I mean, it's her husband is on trial. I would be there.
On the stand, Pennell was described as having, quote, cold, dark eyes that didn't move around a lot, unquote. His demeanor was cold, and he talked about Catherine like she was a piece of trash he could throw away.
Ew.
So basically, an asshole.
Yeah.
And the exact definition of what that is.
Yeah.
Yeah. The jury deliberated for 8 days, which is the longest in Delaware legal history. On Thanksgiving, November 23rd, 1989, the jury reached a verdict, and Pennell was convicted for the murders of Shirley Ann Ellis and Catherine DeMario. However, they couldn't be certain beyond a reasonable doubt that he killed Michelle Gordon.
Is she the one whose body was so decomposed they couldn't identify the cause of death?
Let me double check before I say yes.
Or the one whose body was never found?
No, Michelle was the one with cocaine in her system, and she died before during the beatings.
Okay, well, he definitely did it. I mean, come on now.
I think because just because of the evidence and the amount of evidence they would have to go through, and he would have to go through, they just didn't think that it was worth the time, like to put, not that it wasn't worth the time, but that they didn't want to put the victims and his family through the like extended trials. They wanted to convict him.
Yeah, I don't know.
As soon as possible and put him in prison and give him the maximum sentence for that.
I mean, also the whole, beyond a reasonable doubt, like if there's any inkling of doubt, the jury is told, well, then you can't convict.
Yeah, so that's the other thing, is that if they just had an inkling of doubt, that gives room for appeals. And that was their other thing.
Exactly. They didn't want him to have any excuse for appeal.
And if he had a leeway to appeal one, it could lead to the other two being toppled down. So I do have...
Hello. Oh, what are you doing with that? Where are you going? He's refilling my wine.
Oh, wow. You've got a butler, too, in him.
Dinner's on the table. He's refilling my wine. I can't even handle it.
That's so disgusting. So, in this case, negligence resulting in death is the go-to that people can go to if they don't have enough evidence to convict them on manslaughter. So, and the state doesn't sue. Like, if you die because I did something, but I don't get convicted, there's not enough evidence for the state to convict me for third-degree murder, right? Okay. And we do the trial, the whole kit and caboodle. Try to keep this fact in your back pocket, and I am found not guilty. Well, your mom, as a private citizen, can sue me for negligence resulting in death, and because the standard of conviction is much lower for civil suits, the judge or jury, not a lot of civil cases have juries, they only have to be 51% sure that I was guilty, which means the likelihood of me the verdict being guilty is much higher. So they're most likely to give me that verdict, and then I owe you money, mostly.
Okay, I understand.
Well, not you, because you're dead, but your mom.
Well,
I pay your mom money. Usually civil suits end in some kind of monetary kind of thing.
Yeah, like a payment.
Yes. And because they're two
damages.
different charges and they're two different types of courts, it doesn't conflict with the constitutional double jeopardy thing where you can't be charged
for the same crime.
Not charged.
Convicted of the same crime.
You can't have a case against you for the same crime.
Yeah.
So if that helps everybody in the really jumbled, messed up way, I wasn't expecting to explain it in this depth.
What you said does make sense because if I'm remembering correctly, don't quote me on this, I've had drinks. Anne Marie Fahey's family sued Thomas Capano for some kind of damages, and they got that they won that suit. They were given a payout from him. And I'm not sure, what the case was that they filed against him, but they sued him for something and they won.
Yeah, you can sue people for wrongful death and stuff like that. Even if in the scenario that I just said where I did something and it resulted in your death, even if I was convicted for third-degree murder, your mom could still sue me for damages in civil court. Like I said, it doesn't it doesn't conflict in the constitutional double jeopardy.
Yeah. Well, I mean,
clause.
that makes sense too, because if a person is convicted of murder, that's good because they either get the death penalty or they get life in prison and they're off the streets. Other people are protected from them, but also the families of their victims get nothing from that conviction. So it makes sense that the families should also be able to file suits so that they can at least get damages from
their
pain.
In criminal court, and in some cases, in criminal court, the judge can, if they are found guilty, can add on retribution, retribution and fines and fees and stuff like that to give to the family. It happens sometimes. I don't think it happens often, especially in cases where the individual is from a lower class. But if the judge, I guess, feels like you might get more out of it going to civil court, he won't put that in the sentencing. He'll just have the family do it on their own terms.
Yeah.
I don't know how that works because I think it's a state by state, it's a judge by judge kind of decision. I don't think there's any real hard and fast rule across the board on how that's decided. But yeah, that's exactly what you were saying about the Fahey family doing that is the same thing.
Yeah. Okay, I understand now.
Everybody understands. If you don't, then it'll be on the blog.
Thank you for my little criminology lesson. Okay, I'm ready to keep going.
You're welcome. That criminology lesson cost me $157,000. You got it for free.
Oh, yay. So our Patreon link is
Please help us. We're poor. After the verdict, I did go through the verdict. Yeah, I did. It's been so long. I don't even know.
I'm sorry. We went off on a really long tangent.
We went on a long tangent. We're back now. I'm sure Chelsea has deleted half of that. So he was found guilty for Shirley Ann Ellis and Catherine DeMario's murders, but not Michelle Gordon's because the jury didn't have that beyond a reasonable doubt standard of conviction. After the verdict, the prosecutor, Kathleen Jennings, received a bouquet of flowers with a card that read, quote, "From the women of Route 40, you made us feel like human beings," unquote. And the fact that this is 1989 and there's this case against this man who was killing sex workers who were and are still deemed undesirables, invisible victims, people that nobody cares, society doesn't care about. This means something. I mean,
absolutely it does.
They should be treated like human beings. They should be allotted the respect that any other human being is allotted by right.
Yes.
This is the one thing that is going to be a common theme throughout our podcast because a lot of victims are sex workers. Kudos to Kathleen Jennings for being this badass prosecutor that made these women feel seen and heard and that they matter. The jury could not decide on the death penalty, and Pennell was initially sentenced to 2 life terms in 1990. The defense team still attempted to appeal on the grounds of the unconstitutional seizure of the carpet firebearers, but we all know how it wasn't unconstitutional. Pennell requested to proceed without an attorney, and the motion was granted. He pled no contest to the 2 murders and asked the Superior Court to sentence him to death.
Oh.
However, he never confessed to the murders.
He just asked for the death penalty.
Pennell argued his case by quoting verses from the Bible that stated that if you kill somebody, then you should be put to death.
Thou
those types of
shalt
verses.
not kill.
That kind of
It's kind of a sin.
It's kind of a sin. I believe Pennell was he was Catholic. His last rites were given by a Catholic priest, so I know he was Catholic. On Halloween 1991, Pennell was sentenced to death. Under Delaware law, his case was automatically appealed to the state Supreme Court. He appeared before the court on February 11th, 1992. You and I were not even a twinkle in our mother's eyes.
Not quite.
And asked for his own execution. He remains the only person to represent himself before the state Supreme Court and the only one to ask for death. He still refused guilt. He never spoke about the crimes in first person. He always discussed them in third person, like a crazy person. In doing so, he stated that because the killer committed murder several times, that it showed the killer took pleasure in the killing, which, since we all know he did it.
So he just referred to himself as the killer.
Yep, he referred to himself like as the killer.
That's not creepy at all.
The person who committed this crime obviously enjoyed it because he did it multiple times, which means Pennell enjoyed killing these people. It took pleasure in it.
Don't like that.
Not a single justice in the Supreme Court asked a question, which was
That's incredible.
unprecedented.
Yeah.
It does not happen. The attorneys who were talking about this in the article that I was reading were like, I can't think of a single case where that has ever happened in the state of Delaware.
No.
The court unanimously agreed that the execution was an appropriate punishment for Pennell's crimes, and the date was set to March 14th, 1992, which was only a month after his hearing, which I think was pretty accelerated. Most people sit on death row
for years.
For a long time, but also he's not fighting it. So
yeah, I mean, most people die on death row before they get to their execution. Yeah,
so I think that because he was like, I'm waiving my right to appeal, because you get like an allotted amount.
Yeah. He wanted it. He wasn't trying to stop it.
Yeah, he fast-tracked to the end. His wife, Vera Catherine Pennell, petitioned the Delaware's chapter of the American Civil Liberties Union, most commonly known as UCLA, AU. Can we take that out?
I was about to say, it is not UCLA.
I know, but all the letters are like right there, and then my brain like read them over.
Just jumbled them right up.
The ACLU for a stay of execution. The ACLU did agree to represent Miss Pennell and attempted to challenge the Superior Court's psychiatric evaluation that they did on Pennell. They argued that more time would be needed to actually get a complete full picture of the evaluation for Pennell's competency, but the Supreme Court rejected that argument. The 1991, this is interesting, the 1991 psychiatric evaluation cleared Pennell of depression, paranoia, and psychosis. The evaluation also described him as a, quote, a pleasant, attractive, friendly 33-year-old man who related well to the examiner, unquote. The examiner was a man, by the way.
Of course he was.
The evaluation never diagnosed him with any mental health issues. Pennell's attorney had described him as being a conformist and that he cared what other people thought of him, which is not surprising. On March 14th, 1992, Stephen Brian Pennell was executed by lethal injection and was the first man in 46 years to be executed in Delaware. He had no final words and left no answers for his actions. The police were hoping he would disclose the location of Kathleen Meyer's body before he died, but he took all answers to his motives and crimes to the grave. Pennell spared the victims' families and his own family years of appeals by fast-tracking his execution, but he never answered any questions to the police or the FBI about his motive or answered any of their questions in general about his past, about his family history. There's very little known about Stephen Pennell. So I personally don't agree with a death penalty. And in this case,
I think
that's why.
I definitely think there should have been a stay of execution in this case.
There-
but also,
He wanted to die, and I feel like if he was in prison long enough, he might have said something. I don't think he was strong enough. It just showed this amount of control. He wanted to control.
Yes, and part of me says there should have been a stay of execution so that we could have more information. Another part of me says there should have been a stay because he wanted death so badly. I feel like he didn't receive actual punishment for his crimes because he wanted it.
He wanted it.
He wanted it.
He doesn't get the right to say, I want this.
No,
and
his victims didn't want it, so why should he get it?
Yeah. He did state that he wanted to spare his family seeing him in prison all these years and the appeals and stuff. But, like, I call bullshit on that. I just feel like he wanted to commit suicide. This is the way to do it. And he was going to have the ultimate power. He was going to have all these answers. He was going to have all this information about his victims, himself. And he was going to take it to the grave.
Yeah, I mean, the circumstances of
ultimate power move.
Yes, absolutely.
Ultimate power move.
And the circumstances of his actual arrest, I mean, he was taken into court for a traffic ticket. Like, I think if he knew he was being arrested for murder, he probably would have committed suicide before the police ever got to him.
Yep, he'd have killed himself or, suicide by cop. It would have been something. But God knows what would have happened to his family.
Yeah.
I don't know.
I mean, also going back to what we were saying earlier about the families of these people being victims too, part of me feels like maybe his silence was a mercy to them. Like, they never have to know what his motives were, why he did what he did. Which, I mean, in a way, it can be a mercy. But
it's like we're trying to give this person like a milliliter of humanity.
Oh, he had none. He was absolutely.
We'll never really understand
because
he basically essentially killed himself.
He did. It was suicide by jury, basically.
The ultimate power move. Selfish. And that's one of the reasons why I don't believe in capital punishment, amongst other things that are not actually important, but more common. There are a lot of innocent people on death row.
I mean, morals. What are those?
What are morals? So that's all I have on the Route 40 killer, Delaware's only serial killer, known serial killer. At least I hope it's the only serial killer.
I hope so.
But he's the only known one. And there's not much about his history. I guess people have been really close. There's no Google back then. There's no Facebook back then, so it's not like I can divulge a deep dive on any of that.
Yeah, no.
So nobody's really disclosed anything about him. So if anybody wants to write a book or Netflix do a movie, dropping hints for Netflix. Like, you want to do a movie, Netflix? Here you go. Just dropping tidbits. Please film things in Delaware and use Delaware filmmakers because they deserve it.
Yes, absolutely. I will move right back home if that's the case.
There are really talented people that work in that industry in Delaware, and their
I can attest.
Talents are not
confirm.
known. Their talents aren't known because nobody wants to do anything in Delaware. Do you want a couple more fun facts before we sign off?
Why not?
We all know that Joe Biden is the former vice president of the U.S. and he was a Delaware senator, blah, blah, blah. No one cares.
Yeah.
I'm kidding.
Everybody knows that already.
Whatever, blah, blah, blah. Fun fact for anybody who doesn't know, Delaware was an important stop on the Underground Railroad. Thomas Garrett was a man at the time who lost his entire family fortune In his battle against slavery, he reportedly worked closely with Harriet Tubman and helped more than 2,000 fugitive slaves move through our stop in Delaware. So for anybody who doesn't know, Delaware was a border state in the Civil War, which means half of Delaware fought for the Union and the other fought for the Confederacy. Fought for the Confederacy. Actress Aubrey Plaza is from Wilmington. Some people might know her from
Parks and Recreation.
Yeah, I was gonna say this little show called Parks and Recreation.
Also, what's that movie? Blank and Blank Need Wedding Dates. Nick and Dave or something like that.
I don't know that movie.
Well, she's in it.
She attended Ursuline Academy, which is like all-girl Catholic school, super fun, and participated in productions within the Wilmington Drama League. Her mom, Bernadette Plaza, is still an active attorney in Delaware, and yes, I have emailed her. It has... I am 2 degrees away from Aubrey Plaza, which means I am 3 degrees away from Robert Downey Jr. and Chris Evans.
Hi, honey. Hello.
Yeah, we also have the doctor who developed the Heimlich maneuver, Henry Heimlich, who's also from Delaware.
That's right.
So you're welcome, world.
I forgot about him. I mean, he's so forgettable.
You're welcome, world. If it wasn't for Delaware, y'all would be choking and dying, okay? I do have more facts, but you will have to look at them on our blog post because we are out of time.
Yeah.
We have had, I guess you could say, fun.
I mean, it was something. I'm not sure what
it
was.
Was something. Happy birthday, Delaware. Happy Delaware Day.
Birthday.
We all talk shit about Delaware, but at the end of the day, we get really mad when nobody knows who we are.
I mean, at the end of the day, everybody wants to get out of Delaware, but Delaware will always be home.
Speak for yourself.
Wow. Okay. All right.
Delaware will always be near and dear somewhere in my heart. But if you enjoyed our fun 2-parter episode of Dinner and a Murder, please subscribe and tell your friends to tune in for more information about the crimes we discussed and the restaurants, Capriotti's and Wawa, the holy grail of Delaware. Check out our website.
Please follow and like our Facebook page at DAAM Podcast, our Twitter at DAAM Pod, and Instagram at Dinner and a Murder. We love hearing from you guys there, so check us out.
Yes. Rate and review us on iTunes and Facebook. It helps so much to get good reviews. We get, more publicity. Everybody wants to listen to us.
And we love hearing from you guys. We like hearing your opinions. If you have any questions, comments, corrections, opinions, fun little tidbits about the cases we discussed, or you just want to leave a suggestion, you can message us on our Facebook page or email us at dinnerandamurderpod@gmail.com.
If you would like to help us keep our podcast going, please consider joining our Patreon. Like my mom, she is our first Patreon.
And Kim is all alone. You have to join her so she's not lonely.
Yes, and we have some really cool treats for each tier that we have.
We have tiers for every budget.
We have tiers for every budget. I don't know all of them. Chelsea handles everything, if you can't tell. There's also other ways to support us, which you can find out on our website.
All of the links that we just mentioned are in our link tree in the description of this episode. Please be sure to tune in every Thursday for new episodes.
Thanks for listening.
We'll see you next Thursday.
Are you ready?
Ready.
Bon appetit.
Oh, wait, I thought you were going to count.
Oh, yeah. Okay, let me count. Ready?
Okay.
1, 2, 3.
Bon appetit. Oh, that was close enough. All right.
It was close.
That was close.
Smash them together. Bye.
Bye.